All right, and Treasury Cabinet Secretary CPA John Mbadi is already in studio. We are speaking to him in just a moment, but before I speak to him, I'd like to go back to some statistics that were shared during the State of the Nation address before we speak to him. So we take a look at some of them. Now, these were marked as the key economic milestones by the head of state, and I've just picked a few of them. So the exchange rate, the president put at 129, down from 162 back in February of 2024. And this is a 20% gain. The source is from the Treasury and the Central Bank of Kenya. So this one of the milestones that the president spoke about, the exchange rate going down, stabilizing the economy significantly. Apart from that, the inflation rate was 9.1% in September of 2022 when the Kenya Kwanza government took over. And of course, he put it at 9.6%, but data from the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics showed that actually it was at 9.1%, a difference of about 0.5%, and it's down to 2.7% by October 2024. And there are also fears of deflation following this drastic reduction. Away from that, the foreign exchange reserves again put at by the Treasury at about 9.5 billion, up from about 2.4 billion. And this, the president said, is the highest ever in 10 years. But actually, it's the second highest because back in May of 2019, we had about 10.1 billion, according to the CBK, difference of about 500 million right there, US dollars. And finally, the tax reserve, the president said, again, is up at 11.5%. And that was the second final one. Now, let's talk about the economic growth again, which again was touted as a big economic milestone, because in 2023, it was 5.6%. The projected growth this year is about 5%, and projected growth in 2025 is about 5.6%. So these are some of the milestones that the president enumerated. But I want to begin with something here that is very important, and this is about the inflation rate, which is about 2.7%. I don't know where to find it, but it's somewhere there if I get it. But anyway, I'll ask my question now to the CS Treasury. Thank you so much for coming tonight.
Thank you.
A lot of questions Kenyans have been asking. We posted this on Twitter, and there's so many questions for you. And a lot of concerns for Kenyans is about the affordability, their rate of spending. So I'd like to ask, how does it sit with you that the rate of inflation is at 2.7%, and yet the affording basic commodities, something that should be an imperative, is not happening? How comes we are still not able to afford basic commodities?
Thank you, Ken. First of all, let me just maybe put it into perspective. The rate of 9.6% was in October.
Yes.
September was 9.1. You're right, and so I think we should have corrected that a bit in the president's speech to read October as opposed to September. And the same rates in October this year came down to 2.7% inflation. Inflation, basically the calculation of inflation is based on the adjustments in the cost of basic commodities. So you take a basket of commodities and get the average price. Now, in Kenya, basically, what drives inflation in Kenya is largely food and energy. Mm-hmm. Now, if you look at the prices of food commodities, starting with the basic commodities, basic food items like maize or maize flour, you go to fruits and vegetables, and even to some extent, even the edible oil. The prices comparatively from 2022 have been on the downward trend. And and again, if you look at the price, remember, like in 2022, just before elections, the price of something like 2 kilogram tin of maize was at around 220.
What do we call gorogoro?
Yeah, that is what you call korokoro. It was about 220. Yeah. Today, it's in the region of 120, or depending on where you buy it, but almost half of what it was.
Yeah.
The same with the petroleum products. Petroleum products prices have gone down. So then, definitely, the inflation has come down. Now, to answer your question, inflation can go down, but people still complain.
Why?
Why? Because of purchasing power. If people don't have money in their pockets, if people feel like they don't have enough purchasing power, the commodities will be seen to be expensive, but they are not.
Yeah.
But I want to tell you, Ken, and this may be disputed, but it is backed with evidence, that the biggest challenge we have is with the middle class now, in terms of economic power to buy goods and services. There is something that has been analyzed. If you want to know that the lower class are finding the prices of commodity not too high, then you get the rate of consumption of soft drinks, the soda. The consumption of soda has gone up in the recent past. But the biggest challenge we have at the moment, which we must address, is the issue of liquidity in the economy.
Okay.
And this liquidity is for two reasons. One, the middle class, which are basically majority of whom are employed Kenyans, are finding it a little hard because of some tax measures and levies which were introduced last year, 2023, and coming to now 2024. So these levies and taxes have reduced the purchasing power. They have reduced
They've taken money out of people's pockets.
The middle class.
The middle class.
So that is one thing that we cannot run away from. It is a fact. And so we need to see how then to look for getting a relief to the middle class, because they are better in terms of purchasing. So to grow the economy. The other reason why Kenyans are also finding it a bit hard on the cost of living is the liquidity challenges arising out of failure by government to pay bills owed to Kenyans who have supplied goods and services.
Pending
what
bills.
We call the pending bills.
Yeah.
And then finally is the issue of interest rates. Businesses need to borrow money from the banks and other financial institutions to be able to invest and expand business, creating more employment, and also these businesses will be able to inject liquidity into the economy. We have had challenge with the interest rates, partly because central bank had to raise the base lending rate when inflation was too high. But right now you can see the interest rates are going down, but banks have not responded in equal measure.
Except one or two.
Except one or two. Yes. And even those ones, we still feel they can do better. So last week, the central bank governor had a meeting with banks, and we are trying to implore on them to move towards, because the best lending rate is coming down, they need to reduce the bank lending rates.
But you know as much as I know, CS, that I'll give an example of the US. When Obama came in 2014, that's one of the things. He took all the heads of banks and put them in a room and tried to talk to them. What you're saying is happening currently. To talk to them to reduce the lending, hoping that people will begin. But it didn't happen. They refused. Because the Feds, they can't be controlled. If this is impossible, why don't we go with the easy solutions, for example, pending bills, and we'll have a long session on pending bills. Why is it that it's not easy to go with a solution that is not dependent on the financial institutions? Yeah,
that's right. Your concern and actually observation is right. But first, we can't rule it out that the banks can't respond, because previously we have had sessions, or the government has had sessions with the banks and have persuaded them to lower interest.
And they
have done so. Because again, we tell these banks that if our economy does not respond, everyone is a loser, including the banks. Two, the government must also do its part, and which is to reduce the appetite for borrowing
from the domestic
market. Because again, you are not going to persuade banks to lend to a more risky customer at a lower interest rate when the government, which is considered worldwide as a more less risky customer is borrowing from you. And if you look at the recent statistics and data, you'll see that we are trying to manage our borrowing appetites, and so that we don't send a wrong signal to the economy. And you can see from the time, I will tell you, just when I came into the Treasury, that 91-day Treasury bill had never traded below 15%. This last week, it traded at 12.4%. So,
what do you attribute that to?
You attribute that by sending the right signals. You see, market is just about perception and signals.
Okay.
If you show the market that you are so desperate for money,
they will raise it.
They will raise the interest rate, and they will offer their money at higher interest.
I understand that they
so
get
what we are trying to do, like last week when the subscription of people who expressed interest amounted to 62 billion was on offer, but we only took 27 billion.
Only? Was it? And it wasn't oversubscribed?
It was oversubscribed.
But you only took 27 billion?
We only took 27 billion. And we have been doing that consistently. And managing. You see, we are trying to mop up our revenue collection and trying also to maybe front load some of the loans, that, especially the IMF loans, so that we reduce the rate at which we are borrowing domestically.
Why was that? What was the disconnect? You wanted, it was oversubscribed, or you wanted 62 but only settled for 27?
Oversubscribed.
You wanted 27?
This is what we took. We wanted slightly more. We indicated that we wanted slightly more. I think it was about, I may need to get the correct figure, about 30 something. But then, the amount that was available, if we were to go for everything that 62 was offered, was 62 billion.
Okay.
But we chose to take 27, out of which 20 billion was debt refinancing, but 7 billion was for new debt for this.
The way the government needs money, you are telling me you went to the market, oversubscribed, you got an oversubscription with almost 100%, and then you returned the money. You said we can't take more than we need.
But Ken, you know, your reasoning is what has brought Kenya to where?
It's not my reasoning.
You know, we have to have a fiscal.
Yes.
We have a fiscal program.
Yeah.
We must live within that. Like, we are not going to borrow more than 413 billion.
In this financial year?
This financial year. If you divide this by 12 months, it comes to about 30-something billion. So every week, if you divide that by 4, it means we should be taking between 7 and 8 billion.
Yes.
So we are within our fiscal framework.
Okay.
And Ken, if you have to manage this treasury effectively, you must be disciplined and live within the fiscal framework. This appetite for borrowing just because there is money out there, and then who will pay for it?
Okay, it's us, it's the taxpayers.
The moment you pay more, you borrow more, you are raising the interest. The following week, if the markets realizes or there is a trigger in the market that you are taking every money that comes your way, then they will raise the interest.
And that's is it true, was it that the banks get an average of 2 billion from the government? That's why they don't want our brokenness. That from buying the treasury bills, that's how much money they make from treasury.
You know, the truth is that banks make money from the government.
How much is it that they make from the government, from the taxpayers?
You see, if you borrow 400 billion, you borrow 400 billion from banks, okay, at 18% interest rate, how much is that in a year? Certainly, it will be almost 70-something, 80 billion per year. So how much is that per month? I don't know whether the 2 billion you are calculating
per month, 80 divided by 12, per month.
So it's even more.
Per month,
actually,
yes,
72 more. Or something, they're about divided by 12. It's about 6 billion.
6 billion.
So banks collectively have been making a lot of money from the government. The rate has gone down because now we are offering at 12.4%. And by the way, there is a benefit to that because look, you see, we projected to spend about 1 trillion 10 billion on debt servicing, out of which 756 billion was debt repayment of domestic debts, the domestic debt servicing. Now, the moment you are now borrowing at a lower rate, so we borrow at 12.4%, to retire a loan which we borrowed at 18%.
Yeah.
There is a benefit clearly out of this.
How has the market reacted to this reduction?
The market is reacting by panicking in a way, I say so, because you can see the kind of interest. Some people are trying to lock their money because they are suspecting that interest rate may come down lower.
Yes.
So we would rather lock your money for another 91 days at a higher interest rate as opposed to waiting for a couple of weeks and you end up now buying it at even 10% or low. So that is the reaction that the market...
There's no panic in the market.
There is not panic, at all. But what we say is that the market is reacting. And to me, it is reacting positively.
Okay.
Because, and again, you hear now people are asking whether is there any infrastructure bond being floated.
Yeah.
So many have called me, Waziri, are you just about to issue?
Because that's why the benefit, they had a lot of money in the infrastructure bond.
Infrastructure bond.
Yes.
But we haven't issued infrastructure
And you're not about to issue an infrastructure
no,
bond?
We are not about to issue. But if at all we'll issue, then we'll communicate it.
Okay.
Yeah.
I want to take a break in a few, but you understand that Kenyans are not averse to paying taxes.
No.
One of the biggest concerns of Kenyans is how their taxes are spent. The other concern is service delivery. The other one is about corruption and wastage in the government. How are you addressing this? Because this instills discipline, and not only discipline, but hope in people that there's something that is happening that has not happened before. How do you ensure from Treasury, from where you sit, that you are dealing with wastage?
Thank you. You know, this is a major challenge and a big challenge to us as a country in terms of fiscal management or public finance management. And I will tell you that it is about service delivery, wastages, corruption. It's all revolving about how do we use taxpayers' money. And a number of things that needs to be done. Number one is how do we budget? I think we have already identified that budgeting as one of the areas of weaknesses that needs to be addressed. And that is why we have moved away. This financial year, the budget that is being prepared under my watch is on zero-based budget. That is each and every item, every line item must be explained and justified. And costing must be done so that we standardize the costing. And we have a tool already which we have given, an IFMIS tool to deal with this. Secondly, there have been concerns and issues around procurement. And one of the reasons that has been cited is the human interference. When you allow human interaction too much around procurement, then it is open to abuse. And therefore, we are trying to reduce the human interaction with the procurement process or the procurement system. Okay. And that is why we are moving to e-procurement. And Ken, you'll remember that I said when I came to the Treasury, and this is a commitment I gave to the people of Kenya during my vetting, that when I get to the Treasury, I'll ensure that e-procurement system is implemented and put in place. When I came in, I found the system is there, but what is lacking is the rollout. And the rollout required a budgetary provision of 560 million shillings, which to me is a drop in the ocean compared to what you'll get out of it. Possible loss of funds due to wastage. So what did I do? I approved under Article 223 expenditure, which I hope Parliament will regularize, so that we make this fund money available to roll out, so that just as the President said, in the first quarter of next year, we must have it.
In the meantime, just in 1 minute, in the meantime, what happens? We continue with corruption, money continues to disappear, because zero-based budget and the measures that you're putting in place will apply in the next financial year. Yes. So in the meantime, what happens between now and then?
You know, the laws are still there. The systems are there. We have the agencies, EACC, we have DCI.
So you're banking on them?
Yes, you see, Ken, this is not something that you just walk into an office and fix it. We are a country which is so vast, with procurement happening all over the place. I cannot behave like a watchman or a security officer or even a police officer going to check every office and every door knocking to find out who is bribing who and who is manipulating the procurement system. What I can do at the policy level, and which is the work that I'm employed to do, is to bring policies that would ensure and put in place system that would ensure that we discourage and we reduce to the bare minimum, if we cannot eliminate issues of interference with procurement processes.
Right, 17 minutes to the top of the hour. CS Mbadi stays with me to the next hour. We have a lot to talk about. We'll be talking about pending bills as one of the solutions to putting money in your pocket. We'll have to hear what he says. They've made so many commitments. In fact, if you look at the Kenya Kwanza manifesto, it's one of the commitments. If you look at what the president said when he came into power, out of 13 commitments, commitment number 12 was actually the payment of pending bills, and subsequently they made about 7 statements on pending bills, yet they have not been paid. Aside from that, we'll be talking about the tax amendment bill. You have been accused of trying to reintroduce some of the 2024 provisions. Is that true or false? We'll be delving into that, but first, time for a break.